Right. Hello, everyone. Just wait one more moment as attendees join us. Hope everyone's getting ready for the holidays, making plans, last minute shopping. Get started here in a few seconds. All right. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Evan Starr. I'm a SURF Board of Trustee at Large member. I'm an Environmental Protection Specialist with US DOT Volpe Center. I will be moderating today. I'd like to thank TriHydro for managing and hosting today's session. We are using MS Teams for the second time for our webinar series, so please bear with us with any technical issues, but we are excited to host Hannum, NICOLE Foundation Board Member. Maybe we can move to the next slide here. Just a quick overview for today. All of today's attendees will remain on mute throughout the webinar. This webinar will be recorded and uploaded to the SURF YouTube page following. We'll have a Q&A in the latter half of the presentation, and we encourage you to think of questions for Al or for SURF. Please use the chat tab on MS Teams directly to enter any questions or comments you have. A little background, we are the Sustainable Remediation Forum, nonprofit organization comprised of industry professionals from around the globe. We're dedicated to advancing sustainable remediation practices through collaboration, education, and innovation. We recently chaired 2 technical sessions at the AEHS conference in Amherst back in October. And we're constantly working on new technical initiatives, developing best practices, exchanging professional knowledge, providing education and outreach. Please visit our website for more information on upcoming events, to sign up for our monthly newsletters and future webinars. And with that, I would like to introduce our speaker. Al Hannum is an environmental scientist by training. Over the past 35 years, he has held numerous roles in the environmental consulting industry, from field science, focused on site characterization and remediation, to line and executive leadership roles with Arcadis, CH2M Hill, and AECOM. Al has led environmental businesses globally, working in the United States, Canada, Mexico, South America, Europe, MENAI, and Asia Pacific. He retired in 2019 from his role as the chief executive for AECOM's environmental business unit to start a nonprofit focused on providing pro bono technical support in the environmental field. During this time, he also started a management consulting business where he supports private and public companies with strategy, organization, and change management, as well as private equity clients with company evaluation and acquisition. He is an outside board member for the HR Green, one of the nation's longest operating engineering and consulting firms, as well as a founding board member of the nonprofit NICOLE Foundation. In addition, he also owns and operates a Gracie Certified Training Center, where he teaches their about 250 students Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He also lives in the northeastern part of Pennsylvania. Al, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you. Well, I'm pleased to be here today in my capacity as a board member of the NICOLE Foundation. And I want to share a little bit of information with you, after which we'll have some time for a questions and answer session. So here we go. A little bit on our organization, our mission, our structure and background, and especially some of our projects. And then perhaps how, if you're interested, you can engage with our organization. Just on our mission, so the NICOLE Foundation, we are a Belgian-based nonprofit organization. We are a private foundation, and our focus is on providing technical resources, especially technical expertise in the area of environmental site characterization and remediation. We work with volunteers from all over the world, and we partner with NGOs, public institutions, donors and others to solve some pretty challenging environmental and degraded land projects. The model that we follow is one where there are both issues with funding, the funds that are necessary to clean up pretty significant issues. So we don't operate in a commercially viable space where there is a polluter or a funding organization that has the capacity to pay. Rather, we tend to operate in situations where those organizations may be defunct, or it may even be a defunct government entity, for example, in the case of some of the CIS states. We also operate, generally speaking, where there's the need for technical capacity development, whether it's bringing expertise in analytical chemistry, site characterization, remediation approaches, etc. So we're bringing together expertise to solve problems where there's limited funding and limited technical capability. Our organization is set up so that we have a network of experts that we rely on, and that network of experts operate, generally speaking, on a pro bono volunteer basis. And we match up the technical capabilities of our network of professions with the technical demands that are required by the projects to make sure we've got the right language skills, the right technical capabilities, the right time and availability to commit to the needs of the programs that we operate. We're specifically focused also on any situation where we can help organizations accelerate their SDGs, typically land, life on land, water, partnership are our primary SDG goals that we operate around. We were established in February of 2023. Now, I will say that the NICOLE Foundation is a spinoff of a larger and much longer lived organization called NICOLE. NICOLE's been around about 30 years, and NICOLE is the Network of Industrially Contaminated Land in Europe, was the original organization. And its mission, NICOLE, before the foundation, was really to develop and share best practices for managing contaminated sites across Europe. And so it's an industry, academic, and governmental organization that's all focused on best practice sharing and the state of practice for remediation of contaminated sites in Europe. The NICOLE Foundation then was founded at the 25th anniversary to expand our mission to these nonprofit approaches. Our engagement approach is really to bring problem owners, potential partners, volunteers and experts and funders together to solve these complicated projects and problems. And I'll get to some of those in a minute. Our focus on projects is, again, contaminated land, soil, groundwater, surface water as well is an area. We do projects where there's industrial legacy contamination, contamination from mining and metals operations, ex-military, active and post-warfare situations, etc. And again, as I stated before, the project characteristics we look for are projects where there's a need for both capacity, funding, and expertise. It's important for us, again, to stress that we don't compete with environmental consultancies. We don't compete with commercial interests. These are largely sites that there's no viable mechanism for funding. So we're really working in situations where there isn't necessarily a commercial impetus to clean these things up. Okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of our major projects since we formed the foundation. And really, we're in our second full year of operations. The first project I'm going to cover is a program that I manage for the organization. This is a project in Ukraine. In the early stages of the Ukraine war, one of the major dams at the bottom of the Dnipro River was breached. And as this dam was breached, it created an area of almost 5,000 square kilometers of previously submerged land that is now accessible. This particular dam is the bottom of a cascade that drains a large part of Russia Ukraine, a few other countries, and it has a very long history of industrial use along and agricultural use along the banks of the river. And the question that was posed to us by our client, who is the United Nations, in this particular interest, the United Nations Environment Program, was what are the conditions of the sediments from 70 plus years of legacy drainage from all manner of industrial, commercial, cities, wastewater treatment plants, energy production facilities. What was the legacy of that on these sediments? Is there any contamination in the sediments? What's the nature and extent of it? And what's the risk to potential future use scenarios? So we're in the process now of collecting samples. This is a very challenging area to work in. It's right at the boundary of the temporarily occupied space and the war. So it's a very dangerous place for us to work. There's a lot of combat activities in the area. We are collecting surface water and sediment samples from this area to answer the question. And the primary question that's been asked of us at this point, since the future use of this area is uncertain, they may rebuild the reservoir, they may not rebuild the reservoir, is in the intervening time, is there an immediate risk to sensitive receptors, mostly human health risk issues associated with recreational use of this area and also potential use for farming, whether that's small scale residential subsistence farming or larger scale farming activities. The next project I want to cover is again a Ukraine project that we're working on. This one is also with the United Nations Environment Program and also State Emergency Services of Ukraine. And this is a situation where there's been about 250,000 buildings have been destroyed or partially destroyed during the war. There's a long legacy of the use of asbestos in the country. In fact, asbestos was really used all the way up into 2023, which is a little bit unique. And so there's fairly widespread asbestos in building materials. About 70% of the buildings are estimated to have some amount of legacy asbestos issues. And because these buildings weren't necessarily, the destruction was not in a controlled way, now we have asbestos mixed in with debris, which is obviously not optimal. And so we're looking at ways for the authorities, decision makers to address this issue. And this is really a fundamental capacity issue because right now there are not secure landfills, for example, for managing asbestos. There's not a widely capable laboratory or consulting base that can assess asbestos in its various forms. And so we've got a capacity project there to look at developing guidance, regulation, technical capability among government and private industry and institutions to conduct asbestos testing, selection of PPE, protection of workers. As you can see in these photographs, you've got in the very top photograph, it's very little difficult to see, but just residents trying to clean up in their apartment complexes from these situations. And then down below, you see members of the state emergency services. And, notably, you'll see no respiratory protection, for example, in many of these instances. So we're then going to be taking this and putting together guidance and training for the assessment, awareness around these asbestos issues, as well as some pilot testing of some field separation capabilities. And this program is funded by Japanese aid as well. The next one, this is a project that we're just beginning. This is work that we're doing to assist the municipality of Havana in Cuba to have a look at one of the largest landfills and to look at a cap and closure to help manage drainage, leachate generation, just general, debris and airborne transmission from this landfill. And so we're going to be assisting with an integrated management plan and cap and closure plan here. So we're bringing our expertise in soil contamination, surface water contamination, groundwater contamination, plus also some unique geotechnical capabilities in this instance to assist the municipality in evaluating their closure options and alternatives here in this case. New project also, many of you I'm sure are aware of some of the really challenging situations right now in Syria. This project actually started before the most recent uprising in Syria, but in this instance, we're assisting communities and UNICEF, UNEP, and others in looking at oil pollution from small scale oil production, pipeline releases, and a wide range of oil production issues in Northeast Syria to look at the risk management to the affected populations there. So we're looking at exposure assessments, training and development, sampling and analysis plan development, capacity development with the local authorities to understand conceptual site models and prioritization of risk management approaches. So very interesting program there where we're assisting. That one is especially made complex by the most recent situation with the government there. Another program that I'm involved with, in addition to asbestos and just in general hazardous materials and facilities that have been impacted by war in Ukraine, there's also now a legacy of munitions and explosives of concern, MEC issues associated with mining. As you see in the picture in the middle there, these are anti-vehicle, anti-tank mines, but there's also, Ukraine is now estimated to be the largest and most mined country in the world. Something like an area the size of 4 Switzerlands is actually mined right now in portions of the country. There's also significant, especially in the most eastern oblasts, mine and exploded and unexploded ordnance legacy that must be addressed at some point. You see some battlefield pictures here that were sent to us by our Ministry of Defense partners. And so we're assisting them in understanding, given the types of munitions, very wide range of munitions used in this conflict, to assess the chemical risks, the metals risks, plastic risks, and then the munitions and explosive concern themselves. There's a large potential legacy here that has to be addressed. This is, some of the most significant conventional and warfare activities since World War II. So we're looking at our approaches there to assist them with field sampling capabilities and to understand under a wide range of conditions, impacts to soil, impacts to groundwater, impacts to surface water, impacts to salt marine environments from these munitions, mining, etc. And then evaluating ultimately conceptual site models, remedial approaches, and strategies for land reclamation of these areas that have been affected. Final program I want to talk about, this one's much broader and much wider. We're working for a particular branch of the United Nations that is focused on assessing environmental impacts during conflict of all sorts. So whether it's conflict in Syria, Gaza, Sudan, Ukraine, high intensity, low intensity, everything from public uprisings and riots all the way to full-scale conventional warfare, we're evaluating and putting together guidance for decision makers, for governments, for NGOs who are working in these environments to assess and prioritize environmental risks from warfare. So that could be a chemical facility that is hit by conventional ordnance and potential releases to soil, groundwater, surface water. It can be impacts from displaced populations, for example, impacts to ecosystems from displaced populations, deforestation for fueling, fuel burning, the footprint and impact on waste, water, public health issues from settlement camps, whether they're short-term or long-term in duration. So a really wide range of potential impacts that we're looking at here. We're working to rank those impacts in terms of the most common and most pressing issues, and that includes some of the weapon issues I talked about before, and then to develop guidance for decision makers to do everything from preliminary assessments of the risks all the way through to potential remedies in post-recovery situations. So this goes from active conflict all the way through to recovery, and supports the needs assessments of those governments and from NGOs that operate there. To talk a little bit about getting to my last slide here, where does the foundation need support, and where are there opportunities? There's really three areas that we talk about. One is operating funds. Every NGO needs operating funds. Every organization does. And so, operation funds really go into two ways. They go into supporting the foundation's operations itself. So all of our technology costs, travel costs, things like that, that go to our work. And then project funding. All of these programs that I've laid out, there's a certain amount of funding that comes from, for example, USAID here in the United States. The Department of State funds some of our work. There are other multinational, multilateral funding agencies that support work, but also we bring in pro bono and discounted technical work from our operating partners, many of which are environmental consultancies like yourselves. And so they bring in project funding, project grants from their organizations. Many organizations have their own private foundations at this point, or their own charitable contribution setups, and so we work with them. And then, of course, just individually as well, project expertise and volunteers in every possible discipline. We have folks who are non-technical who have communications backgrounds that assist us with work. We have folks that help us with our technology development. We have folks that are experts in GIS, databases, digital field tools, and then, of course, various technical areas of expertise from site characterization all the way through remediation capabilities. And so we have a fairly broad group of volunteers, but we also have a fairly expanding need for more volunteers. And our volunteer opportunities are in person. There's times when we go into country, of course, but there's also a lot of desktop work that can be done remotely these days, just like our normal project work. And so we have opportunities for really a wide range of interests and situations. And so I'll leave with this is a link to our website, NicoleFound.org, where you can learn a little bit more. There's a sign up page there if anyone's interested in assisting us in any way or learning more about that. There's a volunteer interest sign up place there. And of course, you have my contact information, both that's my email and my text. So you're certainly welcome to reach out to me directly and ask any questions or get any more details in anything that we presented. So with that, Evan, I think I'll hand it back to you to open up for questions from the group.
Thank you, Al. It's very interesting. I don't think I realized how much work you guys did in war zone areas.
Yeah, I myself are spending more and more time in Ukraine these days. So, yeah.
And how does that work logistically? Do you have to get obviously you work I guess with the State Department, or do you work directly with the Ukraine government?
I work mostly through the UN to get in and out. It's a long process.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting place to be. So.
And speaking of which, so you mentioned the sign up page and joining Nicole if you're more interested in trying to help out. Do you have to volunteer to travel in countries, or is there work that you mentioned work that can be done remotely? How does that process work?
Most of our volunteers work remotely. Very few people go in, thankfully. going to these areas, just from a safety perspective and travel costs. So really a lot of what we need can be done remotely, on teams like we work every day.
Okay.
So a lot of opportunities there.
And any of the our webinar attendees, if you have any questions, please put them right into the chat, send them off, and I'll pass them off to Al. I have another one here. So what kind of technical expertise are you guys typically looking for with the NICOLE Foundation?
Yeah, it ranges from assistance with, pretty basic things, helping you set up for a particular site. Take Ukraine's an example that's front of mind for me. Uh, we'll get a request, hey, this chemical plant was hit by, ordnance. They manufactured this. What should we be looking for? In the initial site characterization emergency response stage. So that's something where we'll put together an analyte list, target analyte list, and say, these are the types of things we should be looking at. These are the media we should be looking at. This is the kind of PPE that the emergency responders should be using. So that's one example. We have experts in ArcGIS and Equus, who will help us with, moving data in and out, putting mapping data, for example, mapping results that come back from the laboratory once we sample. We have partners on the ground that will do the sampling usually. We have opportunities, especially right now, anyone who has any experience with MEC issues. We have a strong demand for helping with munitions and explosives of concern residuals. That's obviously a big one. Asbestos is huge. It's a huge issue. The scale is staggering. There's if we assessed 100 sites a day, it would take us 8 years to assess all the sites that need to be assessed. So, we need a lot of assistance there in terms of helping to set up plans. Also, people have a background in training is an area, delivering training is an area where we
Okay.
need assistance too. So there's just a sampling there.
Now, do you guys, you obviously do some assessments for asbestos. Do you guys do coordination for demolition as well, or is that kind of outside the scope?
Yeah, we can right now.
Like demolition, restoration, following
Yeah,
abatement, things like that.
yeah. We expect to see substantial needs in Gaza. Substantial needs in Ukraine. There's a few other places where these demolition this demolition work will become really critical, and that goes everything from just project management, really, right?
Right.
These are the things that need to be done, and then adding in whatever unique risks, chemical risks, asbestos risks, other hazardous material risks into the planning. Yeah. So that's a big need right now.
And I know, it could be obviously challenging to consider sustainable remediation factors in
Mhm.
some of these, physically hazardous areas and war-torn areas. But is that something that the NICOLE Foundation has considered, trying to,
Yeah,
think of long-term remedies that you might consider alternative sustainable technologies?
100%. As a matter of fact, UNEP has a green remediation strategy. Take demining, for example. The conventional method for demining agricultural sites is often just to put in heavy equipment, till the soil, and you're essentially destroying, ecosystems, the
Right.
biota. So they're looking at means for more sustainable demining is just a huge topic, for example. So yeah, absolutely. There's a strong opportunity for sustainable approaches, in all areas, really. Same thing for, going from physical, chemical to, more sustainable remedial practices. One of the things we're looking at is the possibility of using, phytotechnology, for example, to address a lot of the residual chemical issues and munitions issues potentially here.
And I assume even, with some of these munition areas, unexploded ordinances, then do you also consider the use of drones and aerial surveillance for some site characterization? both from a, obviously a physical safety aspect, but you can rope that into environmental sustainability reduction.
Yes, and in Ukraine especially, drone technology is especially advanced right now. There are a lot of areas where you can't fly drones. In fact, anywhere in the country, it's illegal to fly drones right now. But working with the state emergency services and the military, absolutely, it can be done and is being done. Yeah. And some pretty interesting sensor packages as well. So.
So if anyone else has any questions, don't be shy. Wait another moment. In the meantime, so I guess the last question I would have would be, what's next for you with Nicole? What are you currently working on at the moment?
I did see in the Q&A there is a question there from Rivaldo. It says, could you estimate the cost to remediate the impacted soil and water in Ukraine, Syria, and Gaza? So what the United Nations does and the World Bank is they work together, and they have a process where country by country, for countries that are in active conflict, like these three, they do indeed do a needs assessment process, and they do attempt to quantify the costs. In fact, this morning I was on a call where we were looking at quantifying the impact to industrial facilities and the impact to residential building structures, especially high rise and multifamily. So yes, there is a process to estimate those costs. It's looked at over a 10-year window. And if you're interested in that, the World Bank produces annual, and right now for some of these active areas, quarterly estimates of the cost as they learn more. But it's a big number, just in the simplest way to put it. So I don't know if that answers the question or if I can elaborate a little bit more, but there is a process to estimate all of the types of impacts, yes.
Yeah, I did not see that in my chat window. So maybe my org has something restricted on my end. If you see any,
yeah, there's a chat window and a Q&A window, and I saw it in the Q&A window. Yeah, so
if you see any others, take them.
yep. All right, very good. I think that's the last one I see.
Yeah, that's all I see here.
Yep.
Okay, well, we don't have to go the full hour. And everyone's busy.
Here, let me move. I guess I'll move to your next slide then, your announcements.
Yes, announcements, please. So right now we actually are entering SURF nominations. So nominations are open for the SURF Board of Trustees. We have 6 positions, 3 officer positions, including the big ones, president, vice president, and secretary, as well as 3 at-large positions on the board. Nominations are open right now until and through January 10th, 2025. All nominations should be sent to Kathy Adams. Our email is there, kathy.adams@sustainableremediation.org. The voting will take place following the 10th, so starting the 14th through the 30th in January. All positions are 2-year terms. You must be a SURF member to be nominated and to vote. Self-nominations are accepted. So please renew your memberships if they have lagged, or make sure you keep them going. We are always open for new webinar ideas. This is the last webinar for calendar year, and we are looking for some new options next year. I know we are thinking of discussing the environmental justice technical initiative that SURF has been working on sometime in the early spring next year. The next slide here just want to thank Tri-Hydro, Amy Blythe, for all of her help and support in hosting these webinar sessions. Please visit our website, sustainableremediation.org. We will, as I mentioned before, host this recording on our YouTube channel. Links will be up there. We also have upcoming events. The next AEHS conference in the West Coast in San Diego is coming up in March, St. Patrick's Day week. SURF will have some events that will be announced later on. Please visit our website to sign up for our newsletter. I want to thank our sponsors. And I want to thank Al. Thank you for a very helpful and informative presentation on the NICOLE Foundation.
I appreciate your hosting this, yes. So
I want to thank everyone for attending, and happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Happy Festivus to all those who celebrate. So hope everyone has a wonderful holiday next few weeks. Thank you for joining. Till the new year. Thank you all.